Blood splattered across the turkey as Thanksgiving plates crashed to the floor, the moment Sheriff Coleman's deputies dragged Martha Johnson from her dining chair. "You stole these children," snarled a haggard stranger in the doorway, his eyes burning with 20 years of prison rage. Marcus Williams, their long-vanished father, clutched a manila envelope containing DNA tests that would obliterate the sisters' identities. "Layla isn't yours. Zoe isn't yours. Jasmine isn't yours," he hissed at Martha as silver cuffs bit into her 70-year-old wrists. "Tell them who their real father is." The decorated Atlanta principal, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise 3 black girls into a surgeon, an attorney, and a psychologist, locked eyes with Layla and whispered, "Lockbox. Basement. Red shelf." The dashcam footage shows everything. Detective Shanice Washington stepped forward, playing a 3-second clip on her phone. Martha's Cadillac on Peachtree Road, following her daughter's car moments before it careened off that rain-slicked curve in 2003. Layla Phillips, Dr. Phillips to her pediatric patients at Emory, lunged toward her grandmother, only to be blocked by a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit. "Benjamin Taylor, Innocence Project," he announced, sliding business cards across the cranberry-stained tablecloth. "Your grandmother falsified guardianship documents while my client served 20 years for a crime he didn't commit." Zoe's legal training kicked in despite the shock. "Those papers were properly filed through Fulton County Family Court, without the father's signature," Taylor countered, tapping a document. "That's kidnapping." The chandelier light caught Jasmine's tears as she collapsed into her chair. "Daddy," she whispered, the word foreign on her tongue after 2 decades. Marcus didn't move toward his youngest daughter. His eyes remained fixed on Martha, hardened by concrete walls and steel bars. "Where's the money?" "What money?" Layla demanded, her physician's composure cracking. "Veterans benefits. $750,000 worth." Marcus's voice cut through the room. "Your mother's death benefits for my service." This woman cashed every check for 20 years. Martha's shoulders straightened despite the handcuffs. "I spent every dime raising your abandoned daughters." "They're not even mine," Marcus roared, slamming the DNA results onto the shattered remains of pumpkin pie. "Calvin Johnson, your brother, he's their father. You knew it the whole time." The room froze. Detective Washington's body camera captured the moment 3 successful black women learned their entire existence was built on lies. Zoe, who'd prosecuted criminals without flinching, stumbled backward. "Uncle Calvin? Mom's brother-in-law. Your mother's secret lover," Marcus spat. "While I was deployed." Martha's eyes never left her granddaughters. "Tiffany was going to tell you everything that April. She'd filed for divorce." Before someone ran her off Peachtree Road, Detective Washington interjected, advancing the video clip by 3 seconds. The grainy footage showed a black Cadillac, Martha's Cadillac, nudging the bumper of Tiffany's Honda in the rain. Layla's surgeon hands began to shake. "Grandma?" Martha's voice dropped to steel. "Your mother was taking you girls to California. Away from everything you knew. Away from me." October rain lashed the streets of Decatur, like God's own judgment the night Marcus Williams appeared on Martha Johnson's doorstep, 3 shivering girls clutching stuffed animals behind him. Martha hadn't slept in the 6 months since burying her daughter, her only child, beneath Georgia clay at Westview Cemetery. "I can't do this anymore," Marcus announced, pushing past her into the foyer, rainwater pooling beneath his boots. His eyes were bloodshot, his army duffel slung across one shoulder. Not with her ghost everywhere. 7-year-old Layla, Tiffany's spitting image, stood protectively before her sisters. 5-year-old Zoe sucked her thumb, a habit Martha thought they'd broken. 3-year-old Jasmine clutched a frayed pink rabbit, her eyes vacant with the peculiar emptiness of children who'd witnessed too much. "Marcus," Martha began, her principal's voice steady despite the chaos. "You can't just—" "2 weeks," he cut her off, already retreating toward the door. "Maybe 3. There's a construction job in Memphis. Good money." Martha blocked his path. "They've already lost their mother." Lightning illuminated the hollow beneath Marcus's cheekbones. "You think I don't know that?" I was there when they pulled her from that wreck. The girls weren't. Upstairs in Martha's immaculate colonial home, a shrine to Tiffany remained untouched. Graduation photos from Spelman College, her wedding portrait, the Christmas frame from Disney World just 4 months before the accident. Did you get the insurance money? Martha asked, watching his eyes. Something flickered across Marcus's face. What insurance? Tiffany told me she'd taken out a policy. For the girls' college. Marcus's jaw tightened. Your daughter kept secrets, Martha. Lots of them. Little Jasmine suddenly wailed, the sound piercing the tension like a knife. Martha instinctively reached for her, this tiny version of Tiffany, but Marcus blocked her with his arm. Don't act like you care now, he hissed. 6 months I've been calling, asking for help. Your fancy principal's salary could have hired a nanny. Martha's face hardened. You refused to bring them here. Because you blamed me for her death. Marcus's voice cracked. Like I'm the reason she was on Peachtree Road that night. Behind him, Layla's small voice cut through. Daddy said Mommy was going to meet Uncle Calvin. The adults froze. Martha knelt before her granddaughter, heart hammering. What did you say, sweetheart? The night Mommy died. She was going to see Uncle Calvin to get the special papers. Without a guardian signature, we simply can't enroll them, explained Elaine Watkins, the district registrar Martha had worked alongside for 15 years. You know the rules better than anyone, Principal Johnson. For months had passed since the rainy night drop-off. Marcus's promised 2 weeks had stretched into 16 with only 3 brief phone calls from Memphis, Denver, then Baltimore, each time promising money that never arrived. Martha's office at Frederick Douglass Elementary remained her sanctuary, African masks adorning the walls, teaching awards gleaming in glass cabinets, photos with 3 governors who'd recognized her transformation of a failing school into a state leader. These are my granddaughters, Elaine. Martha's voice dropped to a whisper, though her assistant Denise had closed the door. Their father abandoned them. Then file for emergency custody. Elaine slid the enrollment forms back across Martha's mahogany desk. Judge Warner owes you after that character testimony for his daughter. Martha stared at the framed photo on her desk, herself beside Tiffany at her college graduation. The image haunted her now, knowing what she discovered in the months since the drop-off. The paternity test results hidden in her home safe confirmed what Calvin had finally admitted during their screaming match that November night. He'd been having an affair with Tiffany for years, since before her marriage to Marcus. DNA proved he'd fathered all 3 girls. Marcus Williams isn't even their biological father, Martha whispered. Elaine's eyebrows shot up. Does he know?
No.
And he can never find out. Martha's knuckles whitened around her fountain pen. My brother is a married deacon at New Hope Baptist. This would destroy his family, the church, everything. But legally, Marcus signed their birth certificates. He's their father in the eyes of the law. Martha's principal voice returned, the tone that silenced rowdy assemblies and cowed school board members. Those girls need stability, education, health insurance. The fluorescent lights of Memphis Police Department's interrogation room buzzed like angry wasps as Detective Raymond Saunders slammed a surveillance photo onto the metal table. That's you, Williams. Same height, same build, same damn jacket you're wearing right now. Marcus stared at the grainy image of a black man in a dark hoodie pointing a gun at a terrified bank teller. That's not me. 5 witnesses put you at First Tennessee Bank yesterday at 2:15 p.m. I was at a job interview at Davidson Construction across town, Marcus insisted, panic rising. Call them. Detective Saunders laughed. Convenient. No cameras there. Marcus's construction boots, caked with the specific yellow clay from the Davidson site, sat in an evidence bag. His wallet contained $212, his last Army Reserve payment. The robbery had netted $27,000. I need to call someone, Marcus pleaded. My daughters. Your daughters in Atlanta? Saunders interrupted, reviewing the file. Ex-mother-in-law's got them while you're up here robbing banks. It's temporary. I'm sending money. Like hell you are, Saunders cut in. We checked your bank records.
No wire transfers.
No money orders. Nothing to Atlanta in months. Because Marcus had been sending cash, untraceable bills hidden in birthday cards. $300 last month. $200 before that. Not enough, but everything he could spare, while bouncing between construction jobs. My fingerprints aren't on that gun, Marcus insisted. My DNA won't match anything at that bank. Detective Saunders' smile chilled the room. Funny thing about evidence. Sometimes it gets contaminated. 8 months later, the Memphis jury deliberated just 40 minutes before finding Marcus Williams guilty on all counts. The judge, facing re-election in a tough-on-crime district, handed down the maximum, 20 years without parole. As guards led him away, Marcus spotted Detective Saunders talking to another officer, one he recognized from his Army Reserve unit. The same man who'd told him about the Davidson construction job opening, who'd advised which motel to stay at. I need to call Atlanta, Marcus shouted as cell doors clanged shut. My daughters don't know where I am. But his first 5 letters to Martha Johnson's address were returned unopened, addressee unknown, stamped in red. His next 17 disappeared entirely, intercepted by a prison guard with connections to Detective Saunders' brother, a corrupt postal inspector in Atlanta's main branch who owed favors to certain Fulton County employees. Martha Johnson's retirement party filled Frederick Douglass Elementary's gymnasium with Atlanta's educational elite. 3 decades of transformed lives, improved test scores, and broken barriers celebrated with punch and sheet cake. To think you're leaving us to raise those girls, Superintendent Crawford announced, lifting his glass. Those children couldn't ask for a better champion. Martha smiled tightly, accepting the engraved crystal apple. Her savings, once earmarked for a beachfront condo in Savannah, now projected to last just 4 years with 3 growing children. The reverse mortgage on her colonial home would stretch that to maybe 7. Not enough to raise 3 girls to adulthood. That evening, Martha found 9-year-old Layla sitting on her bed, stroking a silver picture frame that had once held Tiffany's college graduation photo. Can we put our picture in here, Grandma? Layla asked. The 4 of us? Martha's heart clenched. 2 years had passed since the rainy night drop-off. Marcus's sporadic phone calls had stopped entirely 8 months ago. The girls had stopped asking about their father. That's a wonderful idea, Martha answered, sitting beside her eldest granddaughter. This can be our special family frame. The next morning, an official-looking envelope arrived. Veterans Affairs survivor benefits for the Williams children. Martha's guardianship paperwork had finally cleared the system, releasing monthly payments that would cover the girls' basic needs. That afternoon, her brother Calvin appeared on her doorstep, unannounced. Madeline found Tiffany's letters, he stated flatly. His wife of 25 years had discovered the affair, but not yet the children. She wants a divorce. Martha blocked the doorway. You can't come here. They're my daughters, Calvin hissed, glancing nervously at the neighbor pruning roses next door. I have rights. You surrendered those rights when you slept with your niece, Martha replied icily. When you let Marcus raise your children believing they were his. Calvin's face darkened. Tiffany was going to tell him everything.
That's why she was meeting me that night.
She had the paternity tests. And then what? Destroy 3 families at once? Humiliate your wife, your church, these innocent girls? I loved her, Calvin whispered, broken. Martha's hand tightened on the doorframe. You preyed on your brother's daughter from the time she was 19. That's not love. That's manipulation. You can't keep me from them forever, Calvin threatened, backing down the steps. DNA doesn't lie. Try me, Martha answered, shutting the door. Cell B, 247 at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution stank of industrial bleach and despair. Marcus Williams sat on his steel bunk, the prison-issued ballpoint pen trembling between his calloused fingers. 7 years into a sentence, he'd written this particular letter 37 times, each version more desperate than the last. Dear Layla, Zoe, and Jasmine, he began, pressing hard enough to tear the cheap paper. By now you're old enough to understand some things. I never abandoned you. I never stopped trying to reach you. Marcus glanced at the small photograph smuggled to him by a sympathetic chaplain, A newspaper clipping from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution showing Martha Johnson accepting a Community Leadership Award. In the background, nearly cropped out, 3 teenage girls in matching blue dresses. His daughters, almost women now. The bank robbery in Memphis. Marcus continued writing. I was framed. The evidence was planted. I've filed 17 appeals. Every one denied. Officer Terrence Webb appeared at his cell door, jangling keys. Mail run, Williams. Marcus folded the letter carefully. In his first years, he'd sent weekly letters, all returned or lost. Now, he devised a new strategy, mailing to Pastor Jefferson at New Hope Baptist with instructions to hand-deliver to the Johnson residence on Magnolia Street. This reaches my daughters, Webb.
No excuses.
Officer Webb pocketed the envelope with practiced indifference. Sure thing, Williams. The letter never made it past the prison walls. Webb delivered it directly to Warden Preston's office, where it joined dozens of Marcus's previous attempts. Williams still trying to contact Atlanta? Preston asked, barely looking up from budget reports. 17th letter this year, Webb confirmed. Detective Saunders' brother at the Postal Service says to keep them coming. Helps their case. Preston frowned. Case for what? Webb shrugged. Above our pay grade, sir. These boxes won't move themselves, Martha. Calvin grumbled, gesturing at stacks of dusty storage containers in his Atlanta attic. After 15 years in Chicago, Calvin Johnson had returned to Georgia following his divorce, buying a lakefront property in the affluent Vinings neighborhood, close enough to visit but far enough to maintain the careful distance Martha had established. I'm only helping because Madeline sent these things for the girls, Martha replied coolly, hefting a container labeled Tiffany. High school. At 73, Martha's principal posture remained ramrod straight, her salt and pepper hair still styled weekly at Darlene's beauty salon. Calvin flinched at his ex-wife's name. Madeline never stopped loving those girls, even after discovering you fathered children with your own niece? Martha finished, her voice steel. Tiffany wasn't blood-related, Calvin countered wearily, their decades-old argument. She was my stepbrother's daughter. She called you Uncle Calvin her entire childhood. A tense silence filled the stuffy attic. 15 years had done little to heal their fractured relationship, maintained solely through perfunctory holiday cards and necessary financial transactions for the girls' trust funds. Martha wiped sweat from her brow, accidentally knocking over a shoebox. Yellowed envelopes spilled across the floorboards, dozens of them, addressed to Tiffany Johnson, postmarked across 5 years. Love letters? Martha asked, her stomach clenching. Calvin lunged to gather them, but Martha was faster, snatching an envelope and pulling out hotel receipts, photographs, and handwritten promises. You were meeting her at the Peachtree Plaza Hotel? Martha's voice shook. While living 3 streets away from us. While she was married to Marcus. Calvin's shoulders slumped. She was going to leave him. For her uncle. Martha's disgust was palpable. For the father of her children. Calvin hissed. She wanted to tell the truth, Martha. All of it. That night on Peachtree Road, she was coming from the lawyer's office with divorce papers. With the girls' paternity tests. Martha froze, her fingers tightening on a photograph. Tiffany and Calvin embracing beside a hotel pool, Layla visible in the background. The girls saw you together? Calvin nodded miserably. Layla knew. Not everything, but enough. That's why Tiffany decided it was time. Martha's mind raced. Layla's comment the night Marcus dropped them off. Daddy said Mommy was going to meet Uncle Calvin. Marcus knew, Martha whispered. He suspected, Calvin corrected. He confronted Tiffany that afternoon. She admitted everything. With trembling fingers, Martha opened a decade-old letter from Riverbend Prison. Marcus's desperate handwriting described his wrongful conviction, his countless attempts to contact his daughters, the corruption that kept him imprisoned and separated from them. He's been in prison all this time? Martha whispered, the room spinning. Not abandoning them? According to this, he was arrested 2 months after leaving the girls with you. Calvin's voice hardened. Did you know, Martha? Of course not. But even as she denied it, Martha remembered the Memphis newspaper headline she'd glimpsed outside the courthouse the day she checked the whereabouts unknown box on the guardianship papers. As Martha descended the attic stairs, she spotted a final box labeled simply, Tiffany, accident. Inside, the complete traffic investigation her brother had apparently obtained, including witness statements Martha had never seen. One witness, a gas station attendant, reported seeing a black Cadillac nudge Tiffany's Honda before it swerved off Peachtree Road. Martha owned a black Cadillac in 2003. She closed the box, mind racing. If Calvin revealed everything at Thanksgiving, the affair, the paternity, Marcus's imprisonment, the girls would start investigating. They'd find the veterans' benefits Martha had managed all these years. They'd discover the manipulated guardianship papers. They might even review the accident investigation. The buzzing fluorescent lights of Atlanta Medical Center's surgical wing had become more home to Layla Phillips than her midtown condo. At 27, she'd become the youngest pediatric surgeon ever granted attending privileges at Emory University Hospital, her steady hands already legendary for repairing the tiniest congenital heart defects. "Dr. Phillips, your grandmother's waiting in the lobby," the charge nurse announced. "Third time this week." Layla sighed, peeling off her surgical cap. "Tell her I'll be right out." Martha sat ramrod straight in the lobby, designer purse perched on immaculate knees, the perfect picture of Atlanta black aristocracy. Only Layla noticed the slight tremor in her grandmother's hands, the new depth to the lines around her eyes. "I brought your mail," Martha announced, producing a bundle of envelopes. "And leftover sweet potato pie." Layla accepted both, kissing Martha's cheek. "You didn't need to drive across town, Grandma. I would have picked it up Sunday." Something flickered across Martha's face. Urgency? Fear? "I needed to talk to you about Thanksgiving. About who might be joining us. Besides Zoe and Jasmine? Is Aunt Patricia coming from Savannah?" Martha hesitated. "Your Uncle Calvin asked to join us." Layla's expression cooled. Though technically her great-uncle, Calvin Johnson, had maintained only the most distant relationship with the sisters, annual Christmas checks, graduation gifts, occasional awkward phone calls. His decade in Chicago had made him practically a stranger. "Why now?" Layla asked. "After 20 years of barely acknowledging us?" Martha's gaze dropped to her hands. "He has information about your mother. About your father." "Marcus Williams abandoned us," Layla stated flatly. "What else matters?" Martha flinched at the name. "There's more to that story." Across town, in the marble-floored offices of the Southern Poverty Law Center, Zoe Johnson slammed her office door, fury radiating from every pore of her 5'4" frame. "They're dropping the case?" her paralegal asked, wincing. "Worse," Zoe growled. "They're denying our appeal. The DNA evidence isn't conclusive enough to reopen Darrell Washington's case. 22 years of wrongful imprisonment, and they won't even grant a hearing." At 25, Zoe had already become the SPLC's fiercest advocate, specializing in wrongful conviction cases. Her passion for justice had evolved from childhood debates into a laser-focused legal career that left scorched earth in courtrooms across Georgia. "His wife died waiting for justice," Zoe continued, pacing her office. "His children grew up without him because some detective planted evidence and a corrupt system protected itself." Her desk phone rang, her grandmother again. "Not now, Grandma," Zoe answered, already scanning the Washington case denial. "I'm drowning in work." "Calvin's coming to Thanksgiving," Martha stated without preamble. "He wants to tell you girls something about your parents." Zoe's legal mind immediately sharpened. "What things?" "Things that might upset you. About your father." "Which one?" Zoe asked sarcastically. "The one who dumped us on your doorstep, or the mystery sperm donor Mom apparently had?" A sharp intake of breath on the line. "What are you talking about?" Zoe sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Grandma, I've suspected for years. The genetics don't add up. Layla and I both have type B blood. Marcus Williams has type O. It's biologically impossible for him to be our father." Silence stretched between them. "How long have you known?" Martha finally asked, voice barely audible. Since my undergraduate genetics course, Zoe admitted. I didn't tell Layla or Jasmine. Didn't see the point in disrupting their image of the father who abandoned us. We need to talk before Thanksgiving, Martha insisted. All of us. There are things you don't understand. Like why you intercepted letters from Marcus Williams while he was in prison? Zoe asked casually, satisfaction coursing through her as Martha gasped. You should know, I specialize in wrongful convictions now, Grandma. I've gotten very good at finding buried information. The line went dead. Across the Georgia Tech campus, Jasmine Williams sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, surrounded by psychology textbooks and research papers. At 23, she was the youngest PhD candidate in the university's developmental trauma program, her dissertation examining the long-term effects of childhood abandonment. Her phone chimed with another text from Martha, the 5th today. We need to talk before Thanksgiving, it read. About your father. Jasmine set down her phone without responding. Of the three sisters, she alone remembered fragments of their life with Marcus, his deep laugh, the way he'd carried her on his shoulders through Centennial Olympic Park, his army uniform hanging in the closet. And one memory she'd never shared, the night before he left them at Martha's house, overhearing him on the phone. You're lying, Calvin, Marcus had hissed. These test results can't be right. They're my daughters. 20-year-old trauma fragments that suddenly felt relevant again. Her dissertation advisor had noted her obsession with father abandonment cases might be somewhat personal, a clinical understatement that made Jasmine laugh bitterly during their sessions. Her entire professional identity had been shaped by Marcus Williams's disappearance. Her research focused on children like herself, her therapeutic approaches designed to heal wounds she still carried. What would it mean if that foundational trauma was built on a lie? Benjamin Taylor's Italian leather shoes echoed through Riverbend Maximum Security Institution's concrete corridors, a sound as foreign to the facility as hope itself. After 13 years of practicing law in mahogany-paneled offices, his 9-month incarceration for contempt had transformed him from corporate defender to crusader. DNA doesn't lie, Warden Preston, Taylor announced, sliding lab reports across the polished desk. Your inmate Williams couldn't have committed the first Tennessee robbery. Blood samples from the getaway car belong to Darius Mercer, a 3-time offender currently serving time in Mississippi for an identical heist. Warden Preston's expression remained impassive. Evidence missed during trial doesn't automatically warrant release, counselor. Evidence suppressed during trial, Taylor corrected, producing a second file. Detective Raymond Saunders' brother-in-law owned the construction company that denied Williams interviewed there. Phone records prove Williams called them. The receptionist who claimed never to have seen him was Saunders' cousin. Preston's eyes flickered. The first crack in his professional facade. That's circumstantial. Taylor's smile was predatory. Tell that to CNN. Their investigation into Southern police corruption airs next month. Riverbend features prominently. 3 hours later, Marcus Williams sat in a conference room, shackles removed for the first time in 2 decades. At 53, prison had carved granite lines into his once youthful face. His military posture remained, though his hair had grayed completely at the temples. The Innocence Project believes we can have you released within 60 days, Taylor explained, spreading documents across the table. Exoneration could take longer. But, my daughters, Marcus interrupted, voice rough from years of disuse. I need to find my daughters. Taylor hesitated. I've located them, Marcus. But there's something you should know. From his briefcase, Taylor produced printouts, social media profiles, newspaper clippings, university graduation announcements. 3 accomplished young black women bearing the surname Williams. They're using my name, Marcus whispered, fingers trembling as he touched Layla's medical school graduation photo. They remembered me. Taylor's expression tightened. They're using your name because Martha Johnson filed for permanent guardianship, claiming you abandoned them. The court records show she checked, whereabouts unknown after reasonable search, on the petition. Marcus's hand crashed against the table. I called her every week for months. I sent letters for years. Which were intercepted, Taylor confirmed, revealing affidavits from a former prison guard and postal worker who'd finally confessed their role in the conspiracy. Detective Saunders had connections in Atlanta, including someone at the Fulton County Courthouse who fast-tracked the guardianship petition. Marcus stared at the papers, 2 decades of rage and confusion crystallizing into terrible clarity. She stole my children. There's more. Taylor slid another document forward, Veterans Affairs payment records spanning 20 years. As their guardian, Martha Johnson has been collecting your children's benefits since 2003. Over $750,000 total. The room temperature seemed to drop as Marcus processed this revelation. She profited from my imprisonment. She raised your daughters, Taylor countered carefully. All 3 graduated from prestigious universities. Layla's a pediatric surgeon. Zoe's an attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Jasmine's pursuing her doctorate in psychology. Tears filled Marcus's eyes, pride and grief colliding. Their mother would be so proud. There's one more thing, Taylor said, reaching for the final folder. Something that changes everything. Inside. School registration forms listing Martha Johnson as guardian, medical records showing the girls' blood types, and a highlighted genetic impossibility that had escaped notice for decades. What am I looking at? Marcus asked. Taylor took a deep breath. Evidence suggesting the girls might not be your biological children. The fluorescent lights of LabCorp's waiting area buzzed overhead as Marcus Williams sat rigidly in an uncomfortable plastic chair. 3 weeks out of prison, freedom still felt like an ill-fitting suit, too bright, too loud, too full of choices. His halfway house room in Memphis provided minimal comfort, but at least the walls felt appropriately confining. Mr. Williams? The technician appeared, clipboard in hand. We're ready for your sample. Benjamin Taylor rose alongside his client, briefcase clutched like a shield. We'll need the results expedited, as discussed. The paternity test was Taylor's idea. A strategic necessity before confronting Martha Johnson with legal action. If the girls weren't biologically Marcus's children, it would fundamentally alter their case from kidnapping to fraud. 3 days later, Marcus sat in Taylor's Nashville office as the attorney opened the secured email containing their results. Before I show you this, Taylor began carefully, remember that parenthood is about more than biology. You raised those girls for 7 years believing they were yours. Marcus's military discipline held his expression steady. Show me. The results appeared on Taylor's monitor. Clinical, mathematical, irrefutable. 0% probability of paternity. Taylor translated unnecessarily. For all 3 girls. Marcus didn't move, didn't blink. The room's air conditioning hummed in the silence. Who? He finally asked. We don't know yet, Taylor admitted. But the genetic markers suggest all 3 girls share the same biological father. Marcus closed his eyes, memories rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces finally finding their proper configuration. Tiffany's late nights. Her unexplained absences. Her reluctance to have more children after Jasmine. Her insistence the girls attend family events with her side, not his. She knew, Marcus whispered. Tiffany knew they weren't mine. Taylor's investigator appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by the question. We may have an answer to that. She placed a photograph on the desk, a charity gala from 15 years earlier. Martha Johnson stood center frame, accepting an award. Beside her, a distinguished-looking man identified in the caption as her brother, Calvin Johnson. Look at his daughters, the investigator directed, pointing to 3 teenage girls in the background. The resemblance was undeniable, the same distinctive jawline Marcus had always attributed to Tiffany's family. The same set of the eyes. Calvin Johnson's biological features mapped perfectly onto the faces Marcus had believed carried his own legacy. Her brother, Marcus whispered, disgust and rage colliding. Tiffany was involved with her uncle. Step-uncle technically, the investigator corrected. No blood relation. Calvin was her stepfather's brother. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing the office. The night I left the girls with Martha. Tiffany and I had argued that afternoon. She'd finally admitted there was someone else, but wouldn't say who. She was going to meet with her lawyer about divorce papers. Instead, she died in a car accident, Taylor noted, reviewing the police report. Single vehicle crash on Peachtree Road during a rainstorm. Marcus froze mid-step. The accident happened the same night I left the girls with Martha. Taylor and the investigator exchanged glances. What? Marcus demanded. There was a witness statement buried in the original accident report, the investigator explained, producing a highlighted document. A gas station attendant reported seeing a black Cadillac following Tiffany's Honda minutes before the crash. The Cadillac appeared to make contact with her bumper before her car lost control. Martha Johnson owned a black Cadillac in 2003, Taylor added quietly. The room fell silent as the implications settled around them. What do you want to do?
Taylor asked.
Marcus's expression hardened into something forged by 2 decades of prison injustice. I want to confront them. All of them. Martha, Calvin, and my daughters. The timing needs to be strategic, Taylor cautioned. We need maximum legal leverage. Thanksgiving, Marcus decided, the irony not lost on him. I want to walk into Martha Johnson's Thanksgiving dinner and show my daughters exactly who their grandmother really is. Martha Johnson surveyed her Thanksgiving table with the critical eye of a woman who'd hosted 48 perfect holiday dinners. Crystal wine glasses caught afternoon sunlight streaming through leaded windows. Heirloom china, her mother's pattern, framed her signature cornbread dressing. 20-pound turkey, bronzed to magazine perfection. Sweet potato pie cooling on the sideboard. Everything perfect. Everything under control. Except nothing was. Her hand trembled as she adjusted the centerpiece. Fall chrysanthemums Jasmine had brought from a campus florist. The cardiac medication wasn't working anymore. Dr. Watkins had been blunt during yesterday's appointment. The stress was killing her. Literally. The doorbell chimed, Layla arriving early as promised to talk. Martha smoothed her silk dress and prepared for the conversation she'd rehearsed all night. Grandma, Layla began without preamble, surgeon's white coat still draped over her arm. We need to discuss Uncle Calvin coming today. Martha gestured toward the living room.
Sit, darling.
There's something. We know he's not really our uncle, Layla interrupted, remaining standing. Zoe figured out the blood types years ago. We've suspected Calvin is our biological father since college. Martha sank onto her antique settee. You knew? We knew something wasn't right, Layla clarified, clinical detachment barely masking hurt. But we trusted you would tell us when you were ready. Today, Martha whispered. I plan to tell you everything today. Before. The doorbell chimed again. Zoe and Jasmine arriving together, arms laden with side dishes and wine. Behind them, Calvin Johnson in an expensive charcoal suit, nervously clutching a bakery box. Martha watched helplessly as her carefully orchestrated revelation disintegrated. Zoe hugged her briefly, lawyer's eyes already cataloging the tension between Martha and Layla. Jasmine, always the most emotionally intuitive, immediately sensed something was wrong. What's happening? Jasmine asked, psychology training evident in her measured tone. What did we interrupt? Calvin stepped forward awkwardly. Perhaps I should begin. Not yet, Martha pleaded. Let's eat first. Enjoy the meal before. Before what, Grandma? Zoe interrupted, attorney's instincts firing. Before you tell us why you've been seeing a cardiologist secretly? Or why Uncle Calvin suddenly wants to play family after 20 years of Christmas checks and birthday cards. Calvin flinched. I deserve that. You deserve worse, Martha muttered. The sisters exchanged glances, years of unspoken questions crystallizing into dread. Someone better start talking, Layla demanded, surgeon's authority filling the room.
Now.
Calvin cleared his throat. I'm not your uncle, biologically speaking. Despite suspecting this, the official confirmation hit like a physical blow. Jasmine sank onto the sofa. Zoe's expression hardened, and Layla's clinical mask slipped momentarily. You're our father, Jasmine stated flatly. Calvin nodded. Your mother and I had an affair while she was married to our dad, Zoe finished, disgust evident. To Marcus Williams. He wasn't your father, Calvin corrected gently. He raised us for 7 years, believing we were his, Layla countered. That makes him more our father than you ever were. The doorbell rang once more. The room fell silent, the palpable sense that whatever came next would shatter their world completely. The front door creaked open. Sheriff Coleman entered first, 2 deputies flanking him. Behind them, a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped into the dining room, carrying a manila envelope like a weapon. Marcus Williams. 2 decades of prison had carved deep lines into his face, but his eyes still burned with the same fire the girls remembered from childhood photographs. "Happy Thanksgiving," Marcus said coldly, tossing the envelope onto the table. DNA test results spilled across the cranberry-stained tablecloth. "These girls aren't mine." Layla's fork clattered to the china plate. Zoe's wineglass toppled, red staining her sleeve. Jasmine froze mid-breath. "What are you talking about?" Layla demanded. "Calvin Johnson is your father," Marcus declared, stabbing a finger toward the man in the charcoal suit. "Not me. Him." Gasps filled the room. "Grandma?" Jasmine whispered, eyes wide. "Is this true?" Martha's silence was answer enough. "Tell them, Martha," Marcus pressed, fury trembling in his voice. "Tell them how you cashed 20 years of veterans' benefits meant for my children. Tell them how you lied to the court, said my whereabouts were unknown while I rotted in prison for a crime I didn't commit." "That's not true," Martha snapped, her principal's authority re-emerging despite the cuffs tightening around her wrists. "I raised you girls when your father abandoned you. I gave you everything." "You stole everything," Marcus shot back. "My daughters. My life. My wife's memory." Calvin shifted uncomfortably, throat tight. "Marcus." "Don't you say my name," Marcus snarled, stepping forward. "You slept with your brother's daughter. You fathered 3 children with her while I was deployed overseas. You destroyed 2 families, and you knew it." The deputies shifted nervously, hands on their belts. "Calvin?" Zoe's voice cracked for the first time. "You're really our father?" "I loved your mother," Calvin said, voice thick. "It was complicated, but..." "Complicated?" Layla's eyes flashed. "You preyed on her since she was 19. That's not complicated. That's abuse." Marcus slammed his palm on the table, rattling silverware. "And Martha covered it up. Tiffany was going to tell me the truth the night she died. She had the divorce papers.
She had the paternity tests.
She was leaving you, Calvin. That's why she was on Peachtree Road." Detective Washington stepped forward, phone in hand. "We have footage. Martha's Cadillac behind Tiffany's car that night. Bumper to bumper." All eyes turned to Martha. Layla's voice was barely a whisper. "Grandma?" Martha lifted her chin, defiant. "Your mother was taking you girls away. To California. Away from your family. Away from me." "She was taking us away from you because she knew what you'd done," Zoe shot back. "Because she was finally ready to tell the truth." Marcus's voice broke. "And you made sure she never did." For the first time, Martha's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, though her voice remained steady. "I did what I had to do, to keep this family together." "No," Jasmine said quietly, trembling. "You tore it apart." The room fell silent, the weight of 2 decades of lies pressing down like a physical force. Sheriff Coleman cleared his throat. "We need to take her in." As the deputies pulled Martha to her feet, Layla reached out instinctively. For a fleeting second, granddaughter and grandmother locked eyes, love, betrayal, and devastation colliding in that single glance. "Lockbox," Martha whispered hoarsely as she was led toward the door. "Basement. Red shelf. The dashcam footage shows everything." Then she was gone. The sisters sat frozen, their world fractured beyond recognition. Marcus stood at the head of the table, chest heaving. Calvin hung his head, shame radiating. Detective Washington quietly gathered the evidence. Thanksgiving dinner lay cold and untouched. The Johnson family's colonial house on Magnolia Street stood eerily quiet. Hours after Martha's arrest, the sisters gathered in the basement, a single bulb casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. Layla ran her fingers along dusty shelves until she spotted it, the old red one near the furnace. A metal lockbox sat on top, exactly where Martha had said. Got it, Layla whispered, dragging it down. The sisters crowded close as Zoe picked the lock with a bobby pin, years of legal internships teaching her more than just statutes and briefs. The lid creaked open. Inside lay decades of secrets, yellowed court documents, insurance policies, old photographs, and one small camcorder labeled Dashcam, April 2003. Jasmine's hands shook as she slid the tape into an ancient player stacked beside boxes of Martha's teaching awards. Static filled the tiny screen before resolving into rain-slicked Georgia asphalt. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. Tiffany's Honda weaving down Peachtree Road, headlights glaring through the storm. Seconds later, Martha's black Cadillac appeared, closing the distance. The cars swerved. Metal kissed metal. Tiffany's taillights disappeared into darkness. The screen went black. Jasmine gasped, covering her mouth. Layla stumbled backward. Zoe's jaw clenched, fury radiating from her entire body. She killed Mom, Layla whispered. She actually killed her. She made it look like an accident, Zoe corrected grimly. And she got away with it for 20 years. The basement air felt suffocating, thick with betrayal. There's more, Jasmine whispered, reaching into the lockbox. She pulled out a stack of letters, all addressed to them, all in Marcus's handwriting. Dozens, maybe hundreds. He never abandoned us, Jasmine breathed, tears spilling down her cheeks.
He tried.
He tried the whole time. Layla's medical training couldn't steady her trembling hands as she picked up one envelope after another. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays. Her father's voice preserved in ink, smothered by Martha's lies. Zoe flipped through financial records, each one more damning than the last. She spent every cent of Dad's veterans benefits. Mortgages, vacations, private tutors. She funded our entire lives with stolen money. She said she sacrificed everything for us, Layla said bitterly. But it wasn't her money she was spending. Jasmine clutched the letters to her chest. She stole our memories, our childhood, even our grief. Footsteps creaked above, the heavy stride of a man. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his frame filling the stairwell. His eyes locked on the lockbox, then the screen still flickering with static. You found it, he said quietly. Layla's face hardened. Why didn't you fight harder for us? Marcus's voice cracked. I did. Every day, for 20 years. Those letters, those were my life. My only hope. Zoe stepped forward, anger radiating from her. You expect us to forgive you because you wrote some letters? You left us with her. You left us to be raised by the woman who killed our mother. I didn't know, Marcus whispered. Not then. By the time I suspected, I was already in prison. Jasmine looked at him, tears streaming. But you knew we weren't yours. Marcus's shoulder sagged. I didn't want to believe it. Even when Tiffany admitted the affair, even when the paternity tests came back, I told myself it didn't matter. You were my daughters. You'll always be my daughters. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Calvin appeared at the top of the stairs, his voice heavy with shame. They're my daughters. Zoe spun on him, fury unleashed. You don't get to say that. You forfeited that right the moment you betrayed every person who trusted you. I loved your mother, Calvin insisted, descending slowly. And I love you. Love doesn't look like this, Layla snapped, gesturing at the evidence spread across the basement floor. Love doesn't destroy families. Calvin's voice broke. I never wanted it to end this way. Marcus's hands curled into fists. It ended the moment Tiffany's car went off that road. And Martha made sure we all paid the price. The sisters stood between the two men, their entire world collapsing and reshaping in real time. For the first time, none of them knew what to believe or who to trust. Thanksgiving night stretched long and heavy, silence pressing down on the Johnson house like a storm cloud refusing to break. The table upstairs sat abandoned, plates congealing beneath the chandelier's cold glow. Down in the basement, truth lay scattered across the floor. Letters, documents, and a flickering tape that refused to stop replaying Tiffany's last moments. The sisters sat in a fragile triangle, each one carrying the weight differently. Layla paced like a caged animal, medical precision failing her in the face of raw chaos. Zoe sat rigid, fists clenched, legal mind cataloging every possible consequence. Jasmine curled into herself, clutching Marcus's letters as if they were life preservers in a sea of betrayal. Above them, Calvin lingered in the hallway, his footsteps hesitant. Marcus stood near the furnace, staring at the static screen as though willing the image of Tiffany's car to change, to correct, to undo. Finally, Layla broke the silence. So, what now? We just live with this? No, Zoe said firmly, rising to her feet. We build a case. We expose everything. Martha, Calvin, Detective Saunders, all of it. The lies, the stolen money, the cover-up. We don't bury this like they buried Mom. Marcus shook his head. That will tear this family apart. Jasmine's voice was small but steady. It already is. Calvin stepped into the light, his face lined with decades of secrets. If this goes public, I'll lose everything. My church, my reputation, my family. You should have thought of that 20 years ago, Zoe snapped. Before you destroyed ours. Enough, Marcus roared, his voice echoing off the concrete. We can't change what happened. We can't bring Tiffany back. All we can do now is decide what future these girls deserve. We'll decide that for ourselves, Layla shot back. Not you. Not Grandma. Not anyone who's lied to us. The sisters locked eyes with one another. Despite the fractures, the betrayal, the devastation, something unspoken bound them together in that moment. Bloodlines uncertain, but loyalty forged in fire. We're not victims anymore, Zoe said, her voice trembling with conviction. We're survivors. And we're going to make sure no one ever buries the truth again. Marcus reached for them, but the distance between father and daughters, biological or not, felt like an unbridgeable chasm. His tears glistened in the dim light as he whispered, I just wanted you to know I never stopped fighting for you. Jasmine finally looked up, her green eyes glassy. We know, Daddy. The word landed heavy, not as fact but as choice. The sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance, carrying through the night air. Whether they were coming for Martha, for Calvin, or for the truth itself, no one could say. But the sisters knew one thing with certainty. Nothing about their family would ever be the same.